We are live on Proline TV, the R Lads Football Network. More NFL talk. AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs. And that means Charles Goldman is with us. He's the managing editor, A2ZSports.com, as you can see right behind him in that nice little red and gold wall. How's it going, Charles?
Doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me back. Fun to discuss some football with the season on our doorstep here.
Thank goodness for that. Let's get the talking out of the way and start watching some football. Okay, so the Chiefs, we know at this point, after what we saw last year, the way the season ended, it really is about two things. If they're going to take that next step and win another championship, the offensive line and the downfield passing game. Of course, getting a little bit more activity in the running game too would also help. So it's interesting, isn't it, Charles, that when we're talking about what the Chiefs need to do to get over the hump, we're talking about things on offense, injuries to the wide receivers, insufficient offensive line play, and maybe insufficient ground attack. That seems to be a little unusual, but it just shows you how good, of course, the defense has been, which is something that nobody really wants to talk about. But anyway, what have you seen so far in this offseason that leads you to believe that they're going to be able to fix some of those issues?
I think it tells you how good Patrick Mahomes has been as well, frankly. I mean, you look around the league right now and you see like basically all of his wide receiver group from the 2022, 2023 seasons. They're getting cut, they're getting traded, they're getting sent all over the place. It's kind of amazing what he was able to accomplish with those guys, as his primary receivers those years. But I think the biggest thing for the Chiefs this year has been the offensive line. Obviously, last season they had the left tackle conundrum where they started 4 different players at the left tackle position. I don't think that's going to happen this season. Josh Simmons has shown that he is everything and more for what they hoped. Just consistency, able to stay on the field. He's healthy from that knee issue he had in his final season in Ohio State, and he just looks really, really sharp, really good as a rookie. And then Kingsley Suamataia as well at left guard, a player who had a really tough go his rookie season and seems to have found a home at left guard and is doing some really nice things there so far. And the team, both the coaching staff and the players, seem to have the utmost confidence in the left side of that line, whereas they did not have that for the majority of last season, whether it was the left tackle spot or then having to kick Joe Thuney out to left tackle, and then you have a backup in at left guard that was not up to snuff as well. So really excited about that, and I think that can be the catalyst for this entire offense when you're talking about, okay, the running backs, the receivers, giving Mahomes time to get the deep passing game going and get the timing down for the intermediate passing game. And then, you have all these investments on the offensive line. What can you do in terms of the run game or getting the screen game going? I mean, you look at all these names across the offensive line right now: Josh Simmons, Kingsley Suamataia, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. Really, the one that's probably the least athletic of the bunch, surprisingly, is Jawan Taylor, and that's only because he's coming off of a knee injury. But like, you look at those 4 names I mentioned, and you've got some serious athletes at the, offensive line position who can get out in space and block. So I'm looking for, that Andy Reid staple to kind of come back, which is the screen game, and be really, really effective where it quite frankly hadn't been last season.
Okay. Also, we talked about wide receivers, and we know that they were banged up last year. Hollywood Brown being able to start, week 1. Xavier Worthy's no longer a rookie. And then one of the talks of camp was the play of Tyquan Thornton. And, he just kind of flailed out at the Patriots. And now he gets another chance with the Chiefs. And sometimes that's all a player needs is another chance. And especially if he's going to up his game from the Patriots to the Chiefs. And then you have even maybe Jason Brownlee, who I know I'm familiar with as a Jet fan, talented player, talented college wide receiver. He actually even made some plays in the preseason as well. So I know they don't get back Rice for 6 games or so. So what do you think about the way the wide receiver unit is going to start this season compared to last season?
I think they're in a little bit of a better spot. I mean, obviously, you had Rashee Rice for the first 4 games last season. That's going to hurt not having him for those 6 games. There's no way to shake that. But I think you're better situated for Rashee Rice absence this year than you were in years past. It doesn't help that Jalen Royals is dealing with the knee issue and that he's not going to be ready for week 1. That was confirmed today.
But that's just minor. That's like, hey, maybe not week 1, but he'll be okay in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, they're describing it as tendonitis, which is a very minor thing, but you need to kind of take care of it, right? To make sure that you're doing the right maintenance every week and so on and so forth. And I think he will be back relatively quickly. I would be shocked if he's out more than 2 weeks maximum. I think it's very possible he could be back by week 2 as well. I don't know if it's going to be a situation where he doesn't travel with the team. That might be something that probably helps. If a knee issue, then if you have swelling or fluid in there, you don't have to get it drained if you're on the plane for however many hours to Brazil. But I think that's a possibility for him, and that could set him up to play in week 2. Hollywood Brown is a guy who's kind of been out the last go of training camp and throughout the preseason. Sounds like he'll be good to go, which is a positive sign because he's developed some good chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy, obviously, year 2, always a good thing, feeling more confident, comfortable in the scheme. I think the one player to really look out for as someone who can be kind of that direct replacement for Rashee Rice in the early goings is Juju Smith-Schuster. If you look at, I think it was week 5 last season, the week after Rashee Rice was hurt, Juju comes in and has a 100-yard receiving game. So he was the beneficiary then. I think he'll be the big beneficiary now in terms of just like a direct one-to-one type of replacement. I'd say with Jalen Royals out, I would look at Nico Remigio as probably the second guy up in terms of who could potentially get some more run. I think Tyquan Thornton really does like slot in as kind of that Justin Watson type role for Kansas City, where he's like that 4th or 5th guy in the wide receiver room who is kind of a matchup nightmare because he's fast, right? He's way too fast to be a 4th or 5th guy, but that's just where he kind of slots in here. And, when I look at him and what he's done this offseason, he takes all the best qualities of like a Marquez Valdes-Scantling and a Justin Watson and combines those into one. And I think he's going to be someone who's going to have a chance, like we saw in the preseason, to have a couple of shot plays per game where he can pick up chunk yardage because he's got the 3rd or 4th cornerback or defensive back who's on the field on him in coverage. Sure. And typically that's not your best guy, right? So the matchup situation plays into his favor. You saw a 58-yard reception that probably could have gone further if he kept his feet under him and didn't have to stretch out for the ball. But look, I mean, the goal this season, the Chiefs have been talking about it, is to get back to that, make you pay type of offense where, sure, okay, if you're going to cover the deep ball, we'll make you pay with the underneath stuff and with the running game. Oh, you're going to cover the underneath stuff in the running game, we're going to make you pay with the deep ball. Last season, they couldn't do that. They really struggled at deep ball accuracy, and they just didn't have time to let the deep passing plays develop because of the issues on the left side of the offensive line. The offensive line was phenomenal through the preseason and really through training camp in allowing that deep passing game and those plays that take a longer time to develop. So that's something that I'll be looking for in week 1 as well.
Okay. So if you had to, and this will be valuable information to fantasy fans. So if you had to rate the receivers production wise in the first half of the season, because even if Rice comes back, when he comes back, it's going to take, you would think it might take him a week or 2 just to kind of get into the swing of things. So let's say half the season. How would you do that? 1 through 4?
Yeah, I do Xavier Worthy at 1. I'd probably do Juju Smith-Schuster at 2, actually. Okay. I'd probably do Hollywood Brown at 3, and then Tyquan Thornton at 4.
Okay.
And if I had to give you a 5, it would probably be Nico over Brownlee, just because I think Brownlee does have some value, and we saw them use him in the red zone, right? But I think, with just the numbers game, he might be a game day inactive early.
And what about Royals?
I mean, Royals, obviously, if he gets healthy and gets back on the field, I think he could slot in. I think he could slot in at 4 if he gets healthy and gets
okay.
back.
So if he's healthy, he should be the 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, until Rice comes back, and then it all changes. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's have you seen anything develop at all from? I know Jared Wiley had some injury issues, of course, last year. I'm sure the Chiefs are hoping that you draft a guy, so sort of like drafting a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round a couple of years before your quarterback might retire. It's the same thing that you're thinking about. I wonder if that's what they're doing with Wiley is, well, let's take a stab at him. He's got some good tools to work with. And then when Travis decides to hang it up in the next couple of years, maybe we don't need to spend a high draft pick on a tight end because we'll have one. So I don't know how Wiley's progressions come, and also the running game too, because on paper, yes, they did Brashard Smith. They got Elijah Mitchell there, but that's the back end of the running back room. The front end is what you saw last year. And again, I know the major deal with last year's, I'm not going to say necessarily poor play besides the offensive line, but less production than they were used to under Pacheco was him getting banged up, which is Pacheco. And that's what you expect out of a running back that runs as hard as he does. So how does the running back room look this year? Or how do you think it might look? And also anything to talk about as far as Wiley's development?
Yeah. So starting with Wiley, I would say that I think that was the plan initially, what you mentioned, right? Getting a guy into the system, grooming him, getting him ready for whenever Travis Kelce's, decides to hang up the cleats, right? Then he had the knee injury last year, and I think that kind of set them back in that goal. In the sense that now he's working his way back from that, learning to trust the knee again. And I think they're not in a rush for him. And just to add to this tight end group, Robert Tonyan was just promoted to 53 from the practice squad. So he actually, in my opinion, would slot in at the number 3 behind Travis Kelce and Noah Gray, because that's what we've seen in the preseason. That's what we've seen in training camp as well. And honestly, when I think about how the Chiefs can offset some of this loss of Rashee Rice early on in the season, they're always one of the teams with the highest percentage of 13 personnel in the NFL. I think last year they were like 3rd in the NFL in 13 personnel snaps. So I think, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and Robert Tonyan are going to be on the field a lot together in those first 6 weeks. And Tanyan's a guy who's had a lot of success in his career. I mean, you look at what he did in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, and you can kind of see the vision for what the Chiefs were thinking here. And, he didn't play last year. He was injured. He came and joined the Chiefs late in the season on the practice squad, so he got a bit of a head start on things. And then Noah Gray has been consistently reliable for Kansas City. I think last year he was one of the most reliable receivers in terms of, catching passes, right? I don't think he dropped a single target. And he was just very, very, very consistent and good. So, when you talk about Travis Kelce entering kind of maybe this twilight season, right, where maybe this is it, maybe this is the end, and you want to keep him good and upright for the whole season. I think they could spread the ball around to this tight end room quite a bit. And you could see some of these guys have some really big games, especially in those first 6 weeks.
All right. So what about the running game? Because they have to definitely get that average up, whether it's Hunt or Pacheco. How's Pacheco's health?
I think he looks great, to be honest. Last season, he looked a little bit slower after he came back from the injury. This year, he looks more on par with what he was prior to that injury. You always have to be aware with him because he has that like physical run through you style where he's just gonna be more prone to getting hurt because of that, because that's the way it goes. You have a very solid backup in Kareem Hunt. They're going to be kind of a 1-2 punch. I anticipate Pacheco being kind of the early down type of specialist, whereas Kareem could come in on third down, be a very solid pass protector or short yardage back in those types of situations on whether it's picking up a 3rd and 1 or a goal line situations. I think Kareem Hunt will be the guy they go to there. And then I think Brashard Smith will have some packages in the red zone as well. And also some varying packages where they'll bring him in and use him as a receiver out of the backfield. We kind of saw in that 3rd preseason game that they're kind of stressing some of that and playing around with it. What you haven't seen with him yet, though, is his ability as a screen, in the screen game. And I think that's something that the Chiefs will lean into as well, because his receiving ability, Brashard Smith, is very, very good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the type of guy who you can motion out of the backfield and line him up at receiver, and he's going to run a route as good as all of your starters. He's that good of a player. And I think that Elijah Mitchell will be a game day inactive. If I had to guess, I think they'll go with Pacheco, Hunt, and Smith as their 3.
Okay.
They've already said they're aiming to have 3 running backs active. So I think that will be the plan there.
And Smith, will he also return kicks?
I think he will return kicks as well. I don't know so much about punts. I think they're going to leave that, in the hands of Nico Remigio, but
Okay.
It's definitely a possibility that he could get in on punts as well if there's an injury or something.
Now, of course, you got Smith as a 7th round pick. Pacheco was a 7th round pick. Chief fans know how productive Pacheco was as a rookie. Is there any chance that Brashard Smith, like you saw from day one, how Pacheco took to, whether or not he took, when exactly he took the reins, and then when he did, it was just his ball. He was the guy the rest of the season. How do you compare what you've seen so far with Brashard Smith's development? Different type of player, I completely understand. But because I'm sure there are some fans out there that are looking at that. Hey, Pacheco's a 7th round pick. Why can't Brashard Smith do what Pacheco did? So
I find it very hard to see him having that similar path, only because he just doesn't have the frame right now to be the bell cow back. Like Pacheco was prepared for that from a physical standpoint. This is still Brashard Smith's 2nd year playing running back. He's going to have a bit of a physical transformation getting into the Chiefs' weight room and system and nutrition program. I would be shocked if he was, like next season, he'll probably be above 200 pounds. If I had to guess this season, I don't think he's going to get there.
Okay.
And that's okay for what they're going to ask him to do this season, which is, he's not going to be running between the tackles, right? He's going to be catching a lot of passes out of the backfield, maybe doing some pass protection work occasionally, because he did excel there during training camp, surprisingly. And then, maybe, some off tackle type stuff or stretch runs or, situations where you can get him out in space where he's not going to be, taking on a linebacker and having to take that punishment.
Any chance at all that because it sounds like to me that, like you said, you're going to have the 3 running back room. It's probably going to be like that most of the season. Any chance that if Kareem doesn't get his average up and the offensive line is no longer the excuse, say, any chance that Mitchell at some point during the season will get the opportunity to get more carries to spell Hunt?
I would say that it's probably more likely than not going to have to be an injury to get Mitchell involved.
Okay.
And, just knowing how the running back position takes a beating in the NFL, there's going to be, whether it's an ankle or something, there's going to be something at some point where, you're going to have to, Hunt dealt with like a groin injury during the preseason, right? So like there's going to be something. And when there is, I think Mitchell can get in there. I was concerned. I thought he didn't quite show enough, even in that last preseason game, to be kind of that number 4 guy. And I really thought the Chiefs were going to be active on the waiver wire, or even bringing in, another veteran type guy on the 53 to just kind of, fit their system a little bit better, but also someone that they could envision as a long-term asset, because you look at that room right now. Isaiah Pacheco, free agent after this season. Kareem Hunt, free agent after this season. Elijah Mitchell, free agent after this season. The only one that's under team control outside of Brashard Smith is probably going to be Carson Steele on the practice squad. And then you bring back Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the practice squad, which is a move to me that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I know he knows the system.
Oh,
he could probably get in there in a pinch, but you know what he is at this point, and he's
Yeah.
not going to help your team win football games more
Yeah.
likely than not.
Yeah.
Good
I
locker
guess.
room guy. I can understand it if they're out there trying to help him out so he still gets healthcare coverage or whatever being in the league. But it's just I that one's a little confounding to me, especially when you have long term needs. I wouldn't be shocked. Say they do have an injury, and it's substantial, and someone's out for an extended period of time at this position. I would not be shocked if by the trade deadline they're looking
Okay.
around the league for someone they could add who could potentially be a long term solution, whether they have 2 or 3 years of control or could be extended after this year, or whatever it may be. Um, I think they could find themselves looking at that spot.
All right. So we'll definitely follow that then. Let's turn our attention to the defense. And so, what about the pass rush? So let's start with the pass rush. They've got to get more. That's everybody knows that. You're a Chief fan, you know it. So, what do you think? You think there's you seeing anything promising at all from camp into preseason that leads you to believe they can be better than last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think their top four are better than last year, to be honest. Ashton Gelati was just dominant in that final preseason game. He had about a 4-play stretch where, outside of the one play that was like a delay of game penalty, which might have been caused by him anyways, frankly, because he was just destroying that left tackle. But um, he had 3 consecutive reps where they were just game breaking. He had one where he was called for a horrible roughing the passer penalty, like throwing the flag on the official for that one. That was they must have called it body weight, but you look at the all 22, he did everything he could to possibly not land on him. So I did not agree with that call. But and then he had just 2 consecutive plays where he just blew up the play in the backfield because he was either reading the cadence or was able to get around that tackle. And yeah, he's someone who's going to develop. I think Charles Omenihu, a year further off of that knee injury, is looking recharged and better. Mike Dana is always consistent. George Karlaftis, we know what he can do. I think that group's going to look good. And then, you also have to consider on the edges, right? You can kick out a guy like Chris Jones. You can also kick out a guy like Jerry Tillery. You can get a guy like Leo Chenal in there rushing the passer off the edge as well. So you have a lot of options there beyond those kind of initial 4. The one thing that confuses me, Malik Herring, he's been with the team for a while. I just don't understand what he brings as that number 5 guy. Maybe it was a special teams decision, but I probably would have kept during these 53-man cuts a different player around instead of Herring. Getting into the D line, that has been the most perplexing of the Chiefs' offseason decisions right now. The interior defensive line.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I was just noticing as a Jet fan, what in the world? That can't be true. They can't be putting Natty. They're not actually going to start him. I got to tell you right now. Now, maybe it was a scheme deal, but he did not look good with the Jets. There was no surprise that if he didn't get traded, he was getting cut. There was no doubt about it. He was not making the team. Wow. So I just got to think it was a scheme difference that he just didn't feel right. I don't know.
The Chiefs have a bone to pick with the Jets right now because they were actually looking for that Jawan Briggs fella from the from the Cleveland Browns, and apparently the Jets had a better offer than the Chiefs, and that led to the Derek Nottie reunion. So a bunch of different dominoes that happened there.
Interesting.
But also moving on from Mike Pennell, who 34 years old, has been the starter or presumed starter throughout all of camp, and then suddenly is not. My understanding of that whole situation was basically that the Chiefs didn't want to guarantee his contract, as NFL teams don't like to do with a lot of vested veterans. That's kind of the play around there, right? They cut these guys, wait and bring them back after the first week, and they play on a non-guaranteed deal. And he seemed to take exception to that because, not necessarily because it's about the money, but because of the principle of being a starter, right? Or being a presumed starter and leader on their team and not getting a guaranteed contract, right? I think that was the problem there. And frankly, I think it's going to hurt this team. Like throwing a Derek Nottie in there after a season, off season away, where he's not at Andy Reid's training camp, where he didn't perform well with the Jets, it's a risk. And then behind him, you have Omar Norman Lott, who's had 2 ankle injuries throughout training camp in the preseason. And then you've got Jerry Tillery, who's in his first year with the team. This position group just feels like a mess to me. It feels like one that's going to very much so backfire. If anything happens to Chris Jones, Lord help them, because they just I don't get what the plan has been here. I don't think I think they had an idea of what they wanted out of this group, what they had hoped for, with the addition of Omar Norman Lott and Jerry Tillery, and some of the guys that they had that they ended up releasing. And I don't think anyone has been able to take a step forward there. And, frankly, it's been this way for a couple of years at the interior defensive line. It's been Chris Jones and, everybody else. And I think that the Chiefs need to find some sort of level of consistency there. And it's been a big failure of the coaching staff to not be able to develop someone and get someone who they can confidently put out there next to Chris Jones on a regular basis.
Yep.
The only one who's been really successful in that regard over these last several years has been Mike Pennell, who's no longer with the team. So he's still a free agent for now. Who knows if that'll still be the case? He could probably wind up out in Green Bay after they traded, Kenny Clark in the Micah Parsons deal. If people will recall, Mike Pennell started his NFL career in Green Bay, so it could be a nice place for him to go, and finish out if he still believes he has something in the tank, and if they still believe they need help there, he could potentially head out north.
Norman Lott's injury status then?
I believe he'll be okay for week 1, but it's one of those things where it's like he's re-injured it now. He injured it in camp, re-injured it. Could potentially be an issue moving forward.
Okay. So at this point, though, because of the injuries, you really haven't noticed or seen any development. You have no idea what you got there.
In terms of Norman Lott, I think no. I had an inkling that the Chiefs had this plan of using him more as a run defender than his role, which was kind of a penetrating 3 technique in college. I had kind of an inclination that they would do that from the start, because I do think he is a better run defender than he got credit for in college, because he just didn't play a lot of those snaps. He wasn't out on the field because they had a very heavy rotation at Tennessee. But just looking at some of the advanced analytics and numbers, some of the tape, I had a feeling that this was going to be something that they tried to do, wanted to do with him. I just don't know if it's successful. I mean, you see him having a couple ankle injuries. Well, he just put on a bit of weight, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. I don't know, but it's a situation where you hope that he can develop and become a participant, and that this injury doesn't linger throughout the season. I would have to guess that they get him out there, get him comfortable in a rotational capacity with maybe Derek Nottie as the starter, then they'll be in a better spot. But and then you look at the practice squad, they just brought in a couple of retreads in Broderick Martin and also Zach Pickens as well. So a couple of former, top 100 draft picks from the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears coming to Kansas City as potential backups or developmental pieces for that interior defensive line. But, it's very difficult in the NFL to come in, after an off-season program and get accustomed and get in a position where you can contribute quickly. I think the Chiefs will be lucky if either of those guys are ready to play by the bye week, after being on the practice squad and learning things and so on and so forth. So we'll see how things shake out, but not too thrilled about the situation in the defensive tackle room.
Okay. Let's talk about the rookies besides Jalot. You got Jeffrey Bassa and Noah Williams, as well as Cooper McDonald, who makes the team as the only CFA linebacker from TCU. So how are those rookies doing?
Yeah. I mean, let's just talk about Cooper McDonald for a second. What a story, man. Going from a rookie mini camp tryout to making the 90 man to making the 53 man. Man, just awesome, awesome story there. And really, really smart move, I think, by the Chiefs keeping him on the roster. Because if you look, I mean, Drew Tranquil is a cut candidate next year because of his cap hit. Leo Chanel is a free agent. So you got two guys who are your starters who could potentially leave, and this is an offseason too, where you're trying to pay Trent McDuffie. You just paid George Karlaftis. You just paid Trey Smith.
Yep.
You got Brian Cook will be a free agent. You've got Jalen Watson and, it's just all these guys, Isaiah Pacheco, right? You got all these guys who are pending free agents. I think the linebacker position is one that they might have to say, Leo, we love you, but so long. Drew, you appreciate what you've done, but we need that cap space. And because of that, you need to have some guys waiting in the wings.
That's right.
And I think Cooper McDonald, Jeffrey Bossa are those two guys who could potentially be waiting in the wings. And, maybe they'll have some additions in free agency, cheaper additions and in the draft as well. But those are going to be your key depth pieces moving forward. And I think, what they've both shown, Bossa, I think his one weakness is he struggles to get off blocks a little bit, but that's because he's a little bit not quite as hefty as some of the other guys in there. He's a former safety, right? But that he's got incredible instincts playing downhill and also in coverage. And then Cooper McDonald as well just made some really nice plays, whether it's rushing the passer or in the backfield. On special teams, he's done it all, and is a really impressive, guy who you can develop for the future.
Yeah, because the Jets had picked up Cam Jones. Speaking of Jets and the Chiefs, so was that what McDonald did? McDonald basically won the spot over someone like Jones.
Yeah, I do think that. I don't know that they were in competition for a single spot. I think the Chiefs would have liked Jones back on the practice squad. I think they thought that they could maybe sneak Jones through as opposed to a guy like McDonald, who really had a tremendous preseason. And it was interesting too. I think another team put in a claim for Cam Jones. So even if the Jets hadn't put in a claim, he probably wouldn't have made it back to Kansas City.
Okay. And, just taking a look here at Cooper's, let me pop this up here. I'm sure most of the Chief fans know this by now, but some might not. Let's take a look at his bio from last year. Let's see. There he is. So, let me see what the stats look like.
I think he was hurt at TCU, which is probably why he didn't get.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing a lot of. There's not a whole lot of production.
He didn't get a lot of interest. In fact, I think the Chiefs were his only minicamp invite. So this was kind of his only option, is to go there and show out and earn a spot. I think he had a pretty strong career. He had a couple other stops besides TCU, but he's the type of player that they're looking for in terms of undrafted free agents who could potentially come in and evolve into a starter.
Well, like you said, it's it's a great story, and this is what you get every year at this time in the NFL, especially with the practice squad, and it's always in flux. I mean, it's you just said even today the new guys that have been signed. I mean, you just that's the thing that just. I don't know. That's the last thing that I'm kind of waiting for the NFL to come up with. I was wondering whether or not, I know contractually it's probably not something they could probably do, but I was thinking of, hey, wouldn't it be nice if they had like a 53-man roster day, where from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, you had your entire roster set. And you could watch as your players get picked up from other teams and things like that. Of course, like I said, contractually it'd be a nightmare, but the NFL is always interested in picking up, these like big days to make things even that much more spectacular. Take advantage of how popular the league is. Because when I look at practice squads now, or when I look at final rosters now, when they're done, because of the way that the league is, I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know, because I know I don't see this guy making the team, but I know he's probably going to make the practice squad. And then you got to wait for the practice squad to come out like 24, 36 hours later. And then even when that comes out, you don't know if the same guys that are on there are going to still be on there. They're like 2 or 3 days later. So
I think that's kind of some of the beauty of it, though, that you don't really know until that first week arrives and it's kind of sinks in, and you're like, wow, this is the team this year, and these are the guys. So,
yes.
Until you get like a Micah Parsons trade or something.
Yeah, well, that's Jerry Jones. Okay, so let's talk then about that secondary, because did they? We talked about the difference between Snead and no Snead, and maybe that affected the depth a little bit. But how is the secondary right now compared to the secondary when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago?
I think this is one of the best secondaries they've had in a minute. You just look at the depth and also the versatility. You have a guy like Chris Roland Wallace listed as a nickel corner, but he can also play cornerback. He can play free safety. He can play strong safety. He can play dime. Like he's going to be all over the field for this team. I think they actually like him as a potential free safety candidate to take over for a guy like Brian Cook. And I think you might see him out there quite a few times this season as a single high safety, because I think he just has the most range of any of the guys on that back end. Then you got a guy like Jaden Hicks, who's kind of stepping into that Justin Reed role, right? Where he's kind of inside the box type, but also can cover tight ends and match up. He can play a little bit of nickel as well. Jamari Connor is another guy who's extremely versatile. He can play free safety. He can play nickel. He can play strong safety as well. So a lot of versatility in terms of the safety room, but also, you look at the cornerback group as well. I think there was a series in that last preseason game where, opens up and you've got Trent McDuffie on the outside. You've got Jalen Watson on the outside. You've got Chamari Connor covering the slot. Then, two plays later, you have Trent McDuffie in the slot. You've got Jalen Watson on the outside, and you've got Christian Fulton on the outside. So there's just a lot of different looks that Spags can throw at quarterbacks where, like, you just don't necessarily know what's coming, and you got all these different guys coming in, coming out. And doing different things for you. And, you don't even have to, in some cases, rotate them out, right? I mean, you can put a group in there where, maybe one snap you have Trent playing in the slot, and another snap you have him playing outside, and you got another guy in the slot. Like, there's so many different things that you can do and change on a play-to-play basis with this personnel in the secondary. It's going to make it really hard on quarterbacks. And I think, specifically, if the Chiefs got any rookie quarterbacks on the schedule this year, it's going to be a tough time for those guys against the Spags defense.
How about the loss of Najee Johnson, and what is his status?
Yeah, he's on IR, designated to return. He was one of the designated to return spots when cut down day happened. So he'll be out at least 4 weeks. And we'll just see, what that looks like when he comes back, who will kind of get bumped. I think that the guy like, maybe Josh Williams, right? If he doesn't, if he doesn't end up contributing on special teams and, on defense the way that they hope he can, because he's been here for so long, I think he's someone who could end up off the roster.
So his development basically stalled, because I remember last year talking to you about it. There was still high hopes, the size and all that, but I
think the physical tools are there, and he has some really strong flashes. I think that he hasn't been able to master and pick up the defense to the point where you'd hope right now, in terms of, just playing one role really on defense, right? You're playing outside corner. You'd hope in this year, right? This is year 4 for him.
Yeah.
So you'd hope that he's a guy that by year 4 would have like a mastery of that, and then be able to be trusted by the defensive coaching staff. I think had Nazi not been hurt, I don't know that he would have made that initial roster.
Interesting. Definitely a player though that would be immediately picked up, you would believe.
Yeah, or even potentially a trade candidate. You never know.
Okay.
And maybe that's a discussion they've had, like, hey, we're not ready to trade him yet, but maybe in a couple of weeks they might be. You never know. But and then Noel Williams, the rookie, right? We haven't talked much about him. I thought he was tremendous during training camp. During the preseason, he had some up and down moments, but more up than down. I think he showed kind of his youth a few times and had a few silly penalties because of it. But I think the future's bright for him, and that he'll likely probably slot in for that Jalen Watson role if Watson leaves in free agency, and potentially be that number 2 corner opposite like a Trent McDuffie, and Christian Fulton's under contract 1 more year as well.
All right. Special teams. We talked about the punter. We know the kicker. So how's the punter? I know that there was. I mean, we talked a lot about Ariza and what a great talent he was coming out of college, and he goes to Buffalo. And I as a Jet fan, I couldn't stand that, especially because I know the Jets after Buffalo let him go had like the first opportunity to sign him, and they decided not to. And then the Chiefs got him. And of course, when you're a Jet fan, you're like, of course, yeah, Jets let him go. And they signed like Thomas Morstead. Yeah, let's sign like a 45-year-old punter and let the Chiefs Super Bowl team get this young, punter with this golden leg. But he didn't have the season last season that I think some people thought he would have. Like instant impact, great punter. So how's he looking now?
I think he's made the improvements that Dave Toub has asked him to make, which is hang time was one of them. He wanted to improve his hang time on punts, and then also just like the pooch area, right? Is what Dave Toub likes to call it, but just making sure that you get the punts directionally into the area you want them to be in, essentially. Which is within the 20-yard line, right? You don't want to punt them out the back of the end zone in most situations, right? But you want to make sure you get them in the right spot there. And I think he's made those improvements and is in a better spot this year than he was last year. And I think we'll see that pretty quickly, as the season kind of progresses.
Okay. Injuries, we already talked about a couple of them. Who else is out that is important as far as a contributor to the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got some interesting ones here. A guy like a Jake Briningstool, right, who was also given the return designation. So that's another, CFA who technically made it, quote unquote, right?
Maybe he'll be the guy to replace Kelsey in a couple of years. Yeah.
Well, I will say, in the early goings before he got hurt, he had some very Kelsey-like plays. So definitely reminds me and is reminiscent of like a young Travis Kelsey. So wouldn't be shocked. He just obviously has to stay healthy. He had a hamstring injury that basically sidelined him the entirety of training camp, and now has him on IR. So we'll see what transpires there. If there's another injury or someone gets banged up, they can bring him back after 4 weeks time, and then they have obviously the 21-day activation window. So a couple extra weeks there after they designate him to return to decide whether to bring him back or keep him on IR the whole season. If they had to give him redshirt year, I don't think they would be mad about that. So I could see that happening where they bring him back, have him practicing, and they're like, hey, look, we're going to keep you on IR the whole year, but next year you're going to have an opportunity because maybe Travis isn't here, right? You never know. Ethan Driscoll on the NFI had appendicitis, had to have an appendectomy, has been out for a little while. I know he's someone they really like, and they kind of went a little light on the offensive line. I think they have 9 on the 53 and they've got 2 on the practice squad. So he's a guy who could potentially come back at some point from that and be eligible to be activated. to the roster. That's something I'll be looking for and interested in, because I thought he was really good last year. Just his ability to get out in space and move at his size. I mean, 6'8", a big guy. So definitely someone I'm watching. The other one on here that I'll say is kind of interesting on IR is probably Janarius Robinson. I think he's the type of guy with the injury, if it's not serious, that like his contractual commitment, you could probably cut him from IR. You could agree to an injury settlement with him and then re-sign him to the practice squad. I think he would have been in line to make that like 5th defensive end spot if he hadn't got hurt and say Felix still gets hurt. Because he was actually really performing nicely in Kansas City. He's obviously only 26 years old, like still a young guy, can kind of mix in with what they've got going on. So he's someone I'm looking at. Like if we get into the season a little bit here and the Chiefs pass rush is lacking a little juice, maybe that's a guy that they decide to waive with the injury settlement and then bring back on the practice squad, promote to the active roster. That's kind of one of those ways that in the NFL where you can get around the finality of being placed on injured reserve.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work for a player like Felix, who is on season-ending injured reserve for a hamstring injury because he's a first-round draft pick. His contract's fully guaranteed. It's going to cost a lot of money to cut him. But for a guy like Robinson, who's probably playing on like a vet minimum type of contract, you can cut that and you'll feel the burn a little bit, but it's not nearly as much as if you're cutting a first-round draft pick.
And how is Felix? What's up with him? What happened there?
Hamstring injury. He is done for the season. He's on IR. He's out. It's unfortunate. Probably doesn't set him up for the 5th-year option, but could set him up for a nice, comeback year in his contract season where he's going to really need to show out to be able to show the Chiefs that he belongs, because he hasn't really been able to do that so far.
Okay, so I want to wrap up the last few minutes, and if any of our live viewers have any questions, you can pop them up whenever you want. Let's take a look. Oh, there goes the drama of that. Let's refresh. Take a look at the division standings. And we have, of course, no surprise that the Chiefs are the team to beat at -115. There's Denver, the Chargers, and the Raiders. So out of Denver and the Chargers, and of course, the Chiefs will play the Chargers week 1. Do you think that Vegas has it right that the Chiefs should worry more about Denver than the Chargers?
Yeah, I think all the teams have their warts, right? In terms of the AFC West right now, I think Raiders are probably the furthest away just based on what they're trying to build. They've got, a new but veteran head coach in Pete Carroll, which that can always help, right? Just in my opinion, coaching is the great equalizer in the NFL, and you got 4 of the best in the AFC West, which is going to make for some really tremendous games. But when you have coaches who are kind of on par in the same level, it's going to come down to personnel.
Yeah.
And I think you look at the Raiders roster, and I think their personnel is probably the worst out of all of these teams.
Sure.
Then, going to the Chargers, I think, they've been cursed with bad injury luck for as long as I can remember, and that did not change when they lost their starting left tackle for the season. Now, they have a great backup in Joe Alt, but I know they would probably prefer to keep him on the right side of the line and not have to play a backup at the right tackle position. The Chiefs fans know all too well what having issues at tackle can do for your team.
That's
so
right.
I think that having them in that 3rd spot is probably accurate just based on that injury alone. And then the Denver Broncos, I think that there's definitely some warranted hype there. It's a really, really good defensive unit. I still think that their offensive weapons are lacking a little bit for Bo Nix. And, the thing about the second season after a good rookie quarterback season, you now have 17 games or plus now of tape on Bo Nix. And for a defensive coordinator like a Steve Spagnuolo, or for a lot of these veteran defensive coordinators across the league, that's going to be able to give them more information than they had to prepare from just from a starting point, a standpoint. When the Chiefs go through their offseason program, they have various weeks or days where they're preparing for specific teams in the AFC West. And that's going to be based on that preparation that the coaching staff did during the offseason, scouring film on Bo Nix to find out some of his tendencies and figuring out some of these things about him that you can then go ahead and, essentially adapt to your game plan and game plan for in advance, right? You don't have to necessarily go, okay, well, we've only seen this guy for a couple weeks and here's what we think he's going to do, right? You now know you have those tendencies. You can tell your players and prepare your players for them in a better way. And you can also, again, game plan for them, get those plays in the playbook and ready for, a key down and distance where you can throw something at him that you know is going to frustrate him. So as much as there is excitement for year 2 in Denver, I think they need to temper those expectations and know that, Bo Nix is going to have a lot more to combat this year than he did his rookie season in terms of what these defensive coordinators throw at him.
Well, I hope they're not too hard on him. He's one of my 2 dynasty quarterbacks. So I just hope he has a nice season. And just stays healthy though. That's all I care about. Okay. So which one would you go? Would you go, they're similar. Would you go Chiefs first, Denver second, or Chiefs first, Chargers second?
I'd probably go Chiefs first, Denver second, to be frank, right now where things currently stand. I could see it coming down to like 1 or 2 games, though, in this division between those 3 teams, to be honest. But those divisional games and those matchups are going to be key. And obviously, again, the Chiefs, Brazil, they have a big week, week 1 game coming up. So that will be key, getting off to a hot start. And we know how Patrick Mahomes does in September. So,
well, why don't we remind the listeners who are not Chiefs fans that like to place money on NFL games in September? What should they do with Patrick Mahomes? Props and all.
Just expect him to go crazy in September, especially now he's coming off a Super Bowl loss. I mean, man's got a chip on his shoulder. You got Adidas releasing advertisements saying that he's going to ruin everybody's Sunday, except for Chiefs fans, of course.
Oh, so, yeah.
Look, he's out for some serious revenge, and he's got the tools to make it happen this year. I've gone far away from doubting this team. I've seen them do the impossible before, and I expect it again.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea then for my year-to-year draft. I'll keep that in mind tomorrow when I'm deciding which quarterback to take. Okay, so here's the win total, and we have 11.5 for the Chiefs. And then if you want to go a little bit over that, you can make a little bit more money at 12.5 over. So what do you think? Have you made your final prediction, Frodo Baggins? You keep disappearing at me on the screen. Did you come up with a prediction yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure my season prediction right after the schedule release was 14-3.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken.
370.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I feel pretty good about that still. Obviously, Rashee Rice suspension, that's a little tough. Some of the moves they've made on the defensive line, the interior defensive line, that has me a little concerned.
Yeah.
I think, anything over 11 would be good. I think, 12 games this season probably wins you the division.
So you're laughing then at the 12.5 number. So you're all over the 2-1. But you're like, hey, I'm gonna start at over 12.5, and then I'm gonna try to make some bonus money at over 13.5.
Exactly. That would be my way to go.
Okay. Meanwhile, the Super Bowl number, the Chiefs. Are you surprised that the Chiefs are considered the 3rd choice in the AFC, the 4th choice overall? They are at 850 behind the 2 teams that'll face each other on Monday Night Football.
That's free money, in my opinion. I mean,
disrespect.
The Bills and the Ravens haven't,
they can't beat the Chiefs.
Credit to them. They can beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but when the games count the most, they certainly cannot
That's it.
For whatever reason may be. I mean, the Ravens, they forget their identity when they play the Chiefs for some reason, which is run the football. But they just seem to forget that and, try to put it all on Lamar. And he has not been able to do that. And then, with Buffalo, these two teams have had some great games. And honestly, some of them have probably been coin flips. So maybe Buffalo, maybe it's their time, but I don't know. I don't know how
do it first.
I don't know how you can confidently predict that when you've seen all of this happen in history. I mean, shoot, the NFL has even gone so far as to change rules after the Chiefs have beaten the Bills in the postseason. And, it hasn't gone their favor. So,
well, I tell you, I think that the team that they honestly, if they can get their defense together, the team the Chiefs probably would be the most maybe concerned with is the Bengals because of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, the Bengals definitely have their number at times. The Steelers, if they can somehow, get something out of Aaron Rodgers, that could be a real shocker. Houston, man, I feel like they have a ton of weapons on offense and some really good
offensive line's terrible.
So far, really good. So. That was what I was going to get at. The lines, outside of a few pieces on the defensive line, definitely still need some work. But man, those offensive weapons for CJ Stroud, that's nothing to scoff at.
Okay, so the Chargers, what do you think about the week 1 matchup being in a neutral field? The Chargers in general, taking a look actually at the latest historical trends, and the Chiefs have beaten the Chargers 7 straight, 3-3-1 ATS in those 7. Keep this in mind, though. The Chiefs are only 5-13-1 ATS in their last 19 division games. Last year, they were 0-5-1. The Chargers were 5-0-1 in the division. That one was against each other. The last 3 in the series has been decided by a total of 10 points. So what do you think about week 1 in Brazil?
Yeah, I've got them winning by a field goal right now. The Chiefs
right on the number.
Winning on by a field goal. I think it's going to be a close game. There's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of nerves. There's going to be some mistakes on both sides because of that. I think, the international travel can always lead to a few hiccups. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think for the most part, outside of, the left tackle situation for the Chargers, both these teams are healthy in terms of, some of their starting players. And this will be a good tone setter for the AFC West to start the season.
Yeah, because the schedule is going to be pretty tough. You got the Chargers, then, of course, the rematch with the Eagles. You get a mini break, and then it's right back at it with Baltimore. So 3 of those first 4, are against as tough as you're going to face to start a season. Jacksonville, that could be pretty tough if the Jags actually are going to improve this year. And then right back at it with Detroit. And then it's like at this point, after this first, it's funny. It's almost like, gimme really tough. And that's kind of like what the schedule is so far here, because they got to play Washington, but then it's back to back with at Buffalo before the bye. And then taking a look at the second half of the schedule is a lot better after the bye. So that first half before the bye, that's going to tell you a lot about whether the Chiefs, if the Chiefs even lose just 2 games going into the bye, I think you got your 14-3.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Look, that first part of the schedule, you've got to. It's a silly phrase, I guess, but you got to beat the best to be the best, right?
Of course, yeah.
The Chiefs aren't going to shy away from the competition. No. I know they got that week 2 game circled though, because they just were not happy at all with how they played against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. They know that they didn't do enough that game, and they're hoping that their team can come out and prove that this team can beat that Eagles team, right? Or this new Eagles team after the Super Bowl loss. So that one, I'm looking forward to that, because that'll be a good measuring stick for them. And if they do not win that game, I do think that will help them actually in the long run, if they were to lose that game, because it's going to tell them that they've got work to do, right? And they'll get that work done and get those things right. So I won't be too concerned if that's their first loss of the season. And that Giants defensive line is going to be a major, major test for the revamped offensive line in Kansas City, right? That's going to be the litmus test right there. Can these guys hold up?
Yep.
That one, I'm looking at Kingsley Suamataia. Like, are you able to hold up on the interior with big decks there? So definitely a tough start to the season, but it's gonna be fun to get these games underway and see what this new group of players can accomplish. If they can make another run at history, if they can get back to 4 straight, that would be quite the impressive feat.
Well, Charles, the one thing, of course, is staying healthy. That's the thing that is the hardest to do, is just
takes
keep
a lot of luck.
Yeah, luck. Keep those superstars healthy. That's the main thing. And if they can do that, they'll definitely have a chance, because they have the edge that no other team has in the AFC, and that is if they're in the playoffs and they're having even last year was like as unimpressive a regular season as they could have, and they still made the Super Bowl. So that's what they got on the AFC come playoff time. And that's why it's in my mind, I think the only way the Chiefs are going to get knocked out is the rest of the teams have got to pick it up. It can't just be Buffalo and Baltimore every year. I mean, you've got to have the Bengals and Joe Burrow up there, and you have to have other teams picking up, like you said, an Aaron Rodgers or a CJ Stroud. Other teams have got to start developing themselves to make it a lot more competitive. Otherwise, the Chiefs are just going to keep doing it.
This last season, virtually everything went wrong for this team on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Like everything.
Yeah.
You've got Hollywood Brown out to start the season. You've got Rashee Rice out after week 4. You got Isaiah Pacheco out with an injury. Those are 3 of your biggest offensive playmaking threats that are out. And you've got Travis Kelce taking a step back from the consistency that he's been, right? Like, you've got the left tackle situation where it's just a revolving door all season long. You're getting no consistency out of the left side of your line. I mean, a lot of things went wrong for this team last season. They were still able to make the Super Bowl. So I just want people to think about that when they're gauging what this team can be this year, right?
Yeah.
Things can still go wrong for this team. I mean, you can argue they already have, with Rashee Rice getting a 6-game suspension to start the year, but they're built to overcome, and they proved that last year, and people seemingly are forgetting that this year.
Yeah. That's why I said it's got to come from other teams, not just Buffalo and Baltimore. So we've been there, we've done that. And like you said, it's a flip of the coin with the Bills, but psychologically, it's kind of not. Psychologically, it's, hey man, we got your number, and that's a thing. It's a real thing. Okay, so anyway, Charles, I appreciate your time as always. I look forward to talking to you during the season, playoffs, all that kind of stuff. In the meanwhile, we have links in the description of this video. You can check it out right now. If you've never heard of Charles before, well, then shame on you. But you can go ahead and check out Charles's work. Of course, and follow him. And you're, are you doing anything with podcasts?
I'm not, but I am appearing on television on Fox 4 Kansas City weekly, Fox 4 Sports
Big
Night.
Shot.
You can watch my spot every Wednesday, 11 p.m. Central Time. It's a fun show, getting on there with Rob Collins and Harold Kuntz talking Chiefs football every week.
What's the station again?
Fox 4 Kansas City. It's WDAF TV.
WDAF TV. Awesome. I am definitely going to check that out, Charles. And I appreciate your time as always. And again, I hope we'll have the time to talk during the season. I'm sure we will. Best of luck. Stay healthy. And I will see you real soon.
Absolutely. You guys take it easy.
Take care, Charles. All right. So I'm going to let Charles go as I wrap up here for the next few minutes. Just want to remind everybody who is still there, we have ourselves a busy Friday, which means I'm going to be busy after lunch. I better get to it. But we are going to be talking. Oh, wait a second. I already had lunch. So anyway, after dinner, I have to decide whether or not to record a show before dinner or after dinner. And that is, of course, going to be a Pigskin Friday show where I'm going to be going over some really good picks that you want to be keeping an eye on. I'm going to go over the trends to keep an eye on for week 1 of college football this weekend. So that's what that show is going to be about. I haven't put a time yet because, again, things are really crammed today. So as soon as I do, that's why you want to subscribe to the channel. And that's why subscribing to the channel will make sure you won't miss any of our programs, because we have a loaded lineup of programming here on Proline TV from really, if you look at it, from Monday morning when Jim Feist, the legend Jim Feist from Vegas, he's from Vegas. He's one of the top handicappers of all time, and he's a partner here on the channel. And he is going to be letting you know early every Monday morning what the line indications look when the weeks begin. That starts week 2. And then he will update you during the week. And then he will give you a Sunday morning last call, take a look at the lines, give you his take, and let you know exactly what he thinks you should do. So that's just one particular show, one particular report. Jim's also going to be involved with Andy Isco and Victor King. Victor King is called like the totals king. I'm sure you can come up with a better name than that. But Victor's one of the really the best totals football handicappers there is. He's going to not only be talking about totals, but also player props. Matter of fact, they just recorded a show, Jim and Victor, a little while ago. I'm going to post that show sometime later today, tomorrow. So look out for that if you're into totals and also player props. He also does a show with Andy each week starting next week. That's going to be for teasers and alternate lines. Okay, so that's going to be every week. Jim will do it with Victor. Jim will do it with Andy. Then we had our weekly playbook podcast, handicappers only, unless they need me to sit in. But these are professional handicappers only. It's the Playbook ATS podcast every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And that's Mark Lawrence, Jim Feist, Andy Isco. And let me show you this. This is a magazine, Mark Lawrence. You see there, that's my other partner. So Mark has put this magazine out for over 30 years. And this is another edition. So if you're into handicapping, NFL, college football, as you can see here, he has at least one page of information for all college teams. He's got 2 pages for all NFL teams, all the best trends, historical trends, coaching trends, anything that you want. That's a magazine you don't want to be without. So check that out. We have a link in the description for that. Just to get screwed up my camera there. Anyway, also, I will be on the air on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to update you on what's going on with football. Mondays to recap the weekend. Wednesdays, we'll have interviews, things of that nature. And also on Fridays, just like I'm going to be doing today, final predictions for college football and the NFL. Jim Feist, Mark Lawrence are going to join me on Fridays. And I think we have that booked for 4 o'clock Eastern every week. So you want to take a look at that. Bottom line is, like I said, if you're into the NFL, college football, if you're into fantasy football, if you're into anything at all football related, this is definitely the channel for you. Of course, we also are related and have a partnership going on with the Our Football Network at ourlads.com. And hopefully you know about them because I was showing you their depth chart as I was doing the show. And they have the best depth charts in the industry, bar none, as well as, of course, a yearly draft guide that comes out. Matter of fact, this is why I interviewed Charles during the offseason. I get really good information from Charles on the Kansas City Chiefs. I have responsibility of about, I think, 10 to 12 teams in the guide every year, Kansas City being one of them. And that great information I get from Charles helps me to put a nice little article together, basically a preview together for the draft for the Kansas City Chiefs every year in the Our draft guide. So if you're into the NFL draft, there ain't no better draft guide out there as well. So check that out whenever we get to the draft. But we don't want to talk about the draft. We want to talk about week 1 in the NFL, which is next Thursday. So please, if you are, again, really big time on football, check us out. And later on tonight, we have another interview scheduled with Corbin Smith Still have to confirm if Corbin is going to be available tonight. That'll be live at 8 o'clock if he is. He covers the Seattle Seahawks. So we have that scheduled. Next week, we have the Patriots, the Saints, the Bengals scheduled, which leaves us only the Rams and the Packers, I believe. And we're talking to those analysts, those are our insiders. And if we can get them both on before next Thursday, we will have hit 32 teams, all previews before the season begins. And say when we get Charles back during the season or any of our guests, there'll be much shorter interviews, 10, 15, 20 minutes tops. We'll talk about what's going on, from last week to the upcoming game this week, that sort of stuff. And I promise you, we're going to have a lot of interviews. So yeah. Oh, college football too. Don't forget that. So we're done with our college football season preview interviews because the college football season is already underway. But we have a load of them that we already have in the bank if you want to check that out in our college football section. So that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in here to our Kansas City season preview, and we hope to see you again real soon here on ProLine TV on the Our Lads Football